So, it seems like you guys really enjoyed the take-along video I made a while back. So, why not do another take-along themed video? I will say this, I did have this idea for the initial video, but I didn't think it really fit because that was more like factual things that are weird about the take-along line, and this is more speculation on things that they didn't make. So I figured this would actually work better as its own video. But without that out of the way, let's just get started. So, take along. They made iconic, legendary characters like Thomas, Percy, and James, and some obscure characters like D199, Coldy, and Mike. However, there were some pretty notable characters they did forget, whether it be a beloved classic character, piece of rolling stock that really should have been made, or characters that were just being new as the take-along range was coming out. And so today, I wanted to make a video discussing the things Take-Along missed, and try to think of a reason as to why Take-Along skipped these things. Whether it was a beloved character or piece of rolling stock, we are going to talk about all the important ones. Now, I will kind of gloss over certain things. I think a good example would be a character like Derek, who had only popped up as a one-off and wasn't really a significant character in the Thomas franchise. However, something significant like Boko, the Express Coaches, or Season 12's newbies will be talked about. So, let's begin! So we're going to start off with rolling stock. And who better to start with than Henrietta, Toby's faithful coach, who Ertl made, and then way later Adventures made. However, Learning Curve seemed to have skipped her, and there was a weird time period where Toby just didn't have Henrietta. So why would Learning Curve have skipped her? Well, my theory would be think about Henrietta's place in the show at the time. So this would have been from like season 6 all the way up to the beginning of the CGI era. Henrietta basically played like no important roles in any episode. She was barely mentioned by name. Like that whole era, I think she was only named like in 3 episodes, if that even. And really, she seemed more like a prop than a character. Granted, Henrietta had kinda always had that issue, but when you look into when they put her in, say, Adventures in 2017, they not only had a face to associate with her, but she was like a character. So they probably were thinking who to make and who not to make, and Henrietta probably just didn't come to mind. And they were like, why not put Toby in a carnival pack instead? Though it shouldn't be much of a surprise they didn't make Henrietta. After all, Learning Curve, unless the coaches were Annie and Clarabelle, had some major vendetta against making coaches. Whether it be the Red Branch Line coaches, the Express coaches, Spencer's VIP coach, the Narrow Gauge coach, all of these were skipped. But I'm mainly going to focus on the Express coaches because, well, it's the thing that most people are more notable about. Heck, the YouTuber Thomas the Tank Engine guy made a really funny short about the lack of Express coaches in the take-along range. How I see their exclusion being, I would say it had to do with length. Because when you think of the Express coaches, they're probably almost as long as Gordon, even with his tender at times. So my theory would be, they looked at how long the Express coaches would be to make, and they thought to themselves, is it really worth making? Because it probably won't even fit in the average take-along carrying case, as it would have to be just as long, if not a little longer than Gordon with his tender, and these are supposed to be easy toys to take around. And if you think that's a bit outlandish, keep in mind the reason that Trackmaster never made a Daisy is because they didn't know what she could pull. So even the most outlandish of things can still happen in Thomas toy lines. I wouldn't even be surprised if this was the explanation for why they didn't make Express coaches. There could be some believability to it. They probably just saw that it wouldn't benefit what they were going for with Take-Along as a line, so they figured, nobody will know. Gordon can just pull Annie and Clarabelle for all of eternity. I mean, it is an aesthetic, I can't deny that. But as for other coaches, I don't really have any real theories for why they say skip the Red Branch Line coaches. I guess they just didn't feel like going through the hassle of repainting Annie and Clarabelle, who knows. But in general, that's pretty much it for the notably missing rolling stock. Like, yeah, I could say, why didn't they make, say, Troublesome Trucks in terms of, like, the van or tanker equivalents? But then I think of other ranges, and it's not very common those are made to begin with. So I'll give Learning Curve a pass. But then let's move on to some of the more juicy stuff, like the road vehicles. To start off, let's talk about the horrid lorries. I know I wasn't going to really cover one-off characters, but this is a unique case, because they did indeed make Lorry 1. However, Lorry 2 and 3 were skipped. Well, unless you count the take-along card, which Lorry 3 was on. But if you want to know more about that, go watch the other video. But, yeah, they didn't make Lorries 2 or 3. So, why'd they only cap it at Lorry 1? Well, there is something about Lorry 1 that doesn't apply to Lorries 2 or 3. If you look at the Ertl model of Lorry 1, it's actually not a normal version of them, where with Ertl's Lorry 2 and 3, they are just normal variations of those characters. So what if Learning Curve just thought, well, Ertl already beat us to making a normal versions of Lorry 2 and 3, so why not we just make a normal version of Lorry 1 for the people who already have the other two? Though, then again, this is a toy range and the sizing will be a bit different, and there is some kind of, validity to that. But I do have another theory, is that they didn't feel like printing more, and because all the lorries look basically the same, Learning Curve was just banking on the idea kids would want to just buy 2 more. I could see either one working. Tell me in the comments below what you think. But what isn't the same is the pack members they skipped. Well, the pack did have a bit of a resurgence around the time their DVDs were coming out from 2006 to 2008, not to mention their appearances in The Great Discovery. Learning Curve did skip a couple of members. Nelson, Oliver, Kelly, Isabella, and Buster were all completely skipped by Learning Curve. Now, to be fair, some of them did get taken plays, some of them were made in adventures, but not all of them got any kind of diecast representation. Some did get Trackmasters or Wooden Railway-esque figures, but that does raise the question of why Learning Curve chose to skip them. This one, I think, actually has a pretty easy, but admittedly kind of boring explanation to it. If you look at how Learning Curve releases road vehicles every single year, barring their first year, 2002, the max amount they would release every year seems to be 4, but that's only on a special occasion. More or less, it seems like 2 or 3 a year seem to be the obvious. So if I had to assume, they probably picked and choose who they wanted to make the most, or thought would sell the best. So all of these guys were probably just skipped because they were not going to be seen as huge sellers. I guess that makes sense. Not to mention rival company Trackmaster was also making them as well, and they honestly just look better in Trackmaster, so I guess they just didn't feel the need to make the rest of the pack. But let's face it, we all know why you're actually here. Hearing about the road vehicles and the rolling stock is cool and all, but you want to hear about the... Yeah, now time to get into these. Characters like Boko, the Season 12 newbies, Kevin, and yes, I'm including characters like Victor and Cullen in this discussion because, well, yeah, it seems weird to not include them in, say, the road vehicle section. They kind of fit here as I feel like they were all not made for pretty much the same reasons, which I'll be going into now. But we gotta start small, so let's talk about Boko, who is the only real Seasons 1 through 4 veteran truly skipped during this time period of toys. I mean, they made Stepney, they made Duke, so why skip Boko? You can't really say it's a relevancy thing. Duke was made in 2009, one of the last ones they made, so clearly that didn't matter, not to mention all the Railway series characters made. So to me, Boko's relevance isn't really the reason I don't think he was made. But how I see it is, I don't think he was impossible. Given how the schedule would work, you would usually see mostly new characters every year, with 1 or 2 classic ones. I felt like if the take-along range were to have kept going, we could have totally seen Boko in 2010, 2011-ish, if they were going with the same schedule of 2 or 3 new characters with 1 old character. I don't see any reason otherwise they couldn't have made him. Or, well, at least I would if it wasn't for what happened with Season 12 and early CGI characters. Yeah, we're finally getting into this part of the video. Notably, Season 12 was completely skipped by Learning Curve, though Hero was made the following year. Victor and Kevin, who also come from Hero of the Rails, were skipped, and it was very clear that they were making Hero of the Rails stuff, even if it was just repainted. So now comes the why was all of Season 12 skipped, and why were characters like Vector and Kevin ignored? Well, looking at the 2008 schedule, that year was the one where Season 12 premiered, we have the one Great Discovery character Stanley, and the two Season 11 characters Billy and Whiff, not to mention other rolling stock and stuff heavily leaning into Great Discovery. So I'm assuming they were blowing all their resources on promoting Great Discovery as much as possible, and then the following year was when they were going to start doing all the Season 12 stuff, and maybe a little into Hero of the Rails. But what I think stopped that was the fact that Hit Entertainment wasn't as interested in funding Learning Curve anymore. It was their final year, and they were kind of scrapping together what they could. Anything Hero of the Rails was usually a repaint of something. I mean, look at the Steamworks versus the Sodor Engine Works. It's basically the same, just repainted. And I feel that lower cost probably made it indicative of what characters would they pick. Well, looking at the 2009 slate of engines, they chose Rusty, a character they did plan back in 2005, but only now got to. They probably were finishing up his prototype, so maybe they were like, you know what, let's just release him, he's going to be easy. Then you got Duke. He uses basically the same narrow gauge running board most of the other ones do, so again, probably an easy character to just make, and maybe even one they had planned for a little while. D199, you can just reuse Daisy's mold, and the only new character they had was Hero. However, Hero's a bit cheap. He was notably the only tender engine to lack an open cab, and it's been very speculated that it's not a final version of Hero, but instead a prototype that, well, they didn't have enough time to make a final version. It can kind of be seen because the Wooden Railway Hero and the Take-Along Hero don't have the same face, and considering Learning Curve was working on both lines and every other character has the same face as each other, it is kind of weird to think Hero doesn't. Not to mention, he just looks a little unfinished, especially when you compare him to his Take-and-Play version that Mattel made a year later. So maybe he was a rush job too. They knew they had to get the one big new character out, so they just couldn't afford the time to release Season 12 or Season 13's new characters. But that's just my theory. I could be completely wrong, but tell me in the comments below why you think these guys were never made. I'd really love to hear it because I'm really curious to the answer to this mystery in particular. But yeah, this was my video talking about the missing characters and rolling stock from Learning Curve. I hope you guys really enjoyed this one. I thought this would be a fun video more on its own. I don't think this one's as good as the other take-along video, but I like what I made here. And tell me in the comments below if you've got any theories as to why any of this stuff was made. And also, I want to make it clear, these are all theories. I did not actually get any information on this. If any of these facts are added to the Wikia without any sources other than this video, somebody is taking me as fact incorrectly. But yeah, hope you all are going to have a good day, and I'll see you all next time.